Come on.
Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, House at large. Since after the Second World War, there was a drive to bring to book tyrant leaders who have disturbed the world, who have sniffed the life of people, and who have suffered and denied people of their human rights. And Mr. Speaker, the United Nations saw this as a duty and as a responsibility to create a judicial arm under it. That was what gave birth to the ICC, which is the International Criminal Court. Ladies and gentlemen, what is the function of the criminal court and what were they created to do, Mr. Speaker? They were created to take care of the life of the people of the cities of the world, to actually bring to book tyrant leaders who have sniffed and actually abused the rights of human beings in their various countries of the world, Mr. Speaker. So we feel that if the ICC was created for this, they were created for this to actually find out good evidence and proven evidence to actually bring this people to book, Mr. Speaker, and not based on their own selfish or a nation's selfish interests that they try to protect, Mr. Speaker. Why do we say they are biased? Well, first, some clarification. We are not going to be hiding here based on we don't want the ICC to do its job, but we want ICC to do its job based on justice and fairness, Mr. Speaker. That is the reason why we from the opening government are proposing this mission. Why are they biased, first of all? We tell you that the reason why they are biased is, firstly, there is unequal representation in the ICC. And secondly, we'll be telling you that most of their actions are distractions to present leaders and government. And thirdly, we'll be telling you that most of their actions has gone against the international law. But firstly, why do we say why do we tell you that their actions are why do we say their actions are biased? We tell you that their actions are biased because in the ICC, first of all, in the United Nations, you find out that there's representation of leaders from different countries of the world to actually vet on issues. But you find out that the ICC is only the presence of the Western countries that actually in government and denial of the African leaders. Mr. Speaker, why do we bring this debate? We bring this debate as a burden, as a problem that's actually existing in the world at large because of the issue of Uhuru Kenyatta of Kenya. The actions and inactions of the ICC has proven to us that they are not trying to bring justice, but rather they are trying to disrupt the activities of the government. But we tell you that international law actually proves that for you to actually charge a leader or for you to actually bring the leader for a crime he committed, it is after he has left power, not in power, Mr. Speaker. So we feel that the sovereignty of this country and the sovereignty of the leader or the impunity by which this leader actually has been denied and has been destroyed by the ICC. So we feel it is against the international law. And we also told you that we also told you that there is an unequal representation in the House. We find out that if actually ICC is actually covering the whole world and every leader of the world is actually a member or every nation of the world is a signatory of the ICC, we tell you that definitely all leaders or all the African countries will actually have proper representation as judges in the ICC, Mr. Speaker. So we feel that since Africans are not properly represented in the ICC, the Western nation has used this as a tool to actually perpetrate acts of disruption of government in Africa and also to label African leaders as being brutal, whereas they have not been proven to be so.
I'll take it. Can actually prove that there is no magnitude of severity of crimes that actually could tilt the duration and sensitivity of African criminal cases and deny your conspiracy theory.
Mr. Speaker, I can tell you that even if a leader, we give an example of Charles Taylor. Charles Taylor was found guilty of genocide, right? But he was found, first of all, found guilty by the municipal court of Liberia before ICC actually came into being. That's to show you that the municipal court or the sovereignty of the nation actually fell on him by actually making him to be a genocidal leader before the ICC punished him. But we find out that in cases of Uhuru Kenyatta, the municipal court have not charged him to be guilty, Mr. Speaker. But the ICC came into Kenya to actually call him to come for to actually charge him for acts that they said he committed, Mr. Speaker. So we feel it is wrong. They should have actually waited for Uhuru Kenyatta to leave power, then they actually bring him to book, not by disrupting his government to actually bring justice to the people. So we feel that there is unequal representation and fairness is not actually represented by the ICC. And secondly, we'll tell you that the reason again how we say the ICC is biased is that we find out that they work mostly based on the US directive. We tell you that first of all, that US is not a signatory of ICC. But actually, you find out that they veto issues based on the United Nations to actually act on African leaders to So I feel that if they're acting based on the directive of the United States, then they are not representing the world by this. So if they are just acting based on the country decision and based on the president of the US decision and not based on the world decision. So if their acts are actually biased and it is sentimental. And also, we give you an example of issues because we'll be running a comparative. No, thank you, sir. We'll be running a comparative analysis of issues that have actually called for ICC's attention that didn't respond, and issues that didn't come for the attention that didn't respond. But firstly, we give you the issue of Bill Clinton. We told you that Bill Clinton went into Kosovo to invade Kosovo, Mr. Speaker, without the decision of the United Nations, and it actually led to the killings of people in Kosovo, Mr. Speaker. Now, ICC did not come to actually charge Bill Clinton, but they left him. Why? Because he's a US president. But when there's issues in Africa, Mr. Speaker, you see them running to actually come to Africa to hold their leaders, Mr. Speaker. So we feel their acts are unbiased, Mr. Speaker. And also, we give an example of Israel. We've seen issues of killing. We see issues of stealing from people's lives. We see people see issues of whereby they deny people's right to life, people's right to property, and people's right to freedom, Mr. Speaker, in Israel, Mr. Speaker. But the ICC didn't come into it, Mr. Speaker. These are issues whereby ICC should have come to actually bring the law against people, Mr. Speaker. But when the issue of Africa, Mr. Speaker, they run easily to come into Africa to disturb our Africa. So we feel it is bad. What do we aim to achieve, Mr. Speaker? We want to achieve equality before the law, Mr. Speaker. We feel every individual in the world, Mr. Speaker, should be equal before the law and not be based on sentimental attachment or based on the US directive because they are the vendors of the United Nations, Mr. Speaker. We also want to achieve proper justice, Mr. Speaker. Proper justice should be given to the people of Africa, Mr. Speaker, based on proper representation in the House of Judges, Mr. Speaker, in ICC, because it's only by that we could bring proper justice to the world at large when there is proper representation of everybody that is signatory of the ICC. I also told you that we want to also bring fairness of African leaders. We are not saying that African leaders have not committed crimes, but we say that they should actually obey the international law, the municipal law, actually guide this country. The sovereignty of the president will cease. We told you that when a president actually commits an act, they should wait for him to leave power before coming after him, Mr. Speaker. Because if they come to him when he's on power, they will actually disrupt the activities and disrupt his presidential duties and responsibility, which the people have voted him to be, Mr. Speaker. What have we told you in this debate? We've told you that the actions and inactions of ICC, Mr. Speaker, are biased based on the reason that they act based on the directive from the United States of America. They also told you that there is unequal representation in African people in the ICC, Mr. Speaker. I will also give you the reason why we want to achieve it. Thank you, Mr.
Speaker. Leader of opposition, please come on and present your own position.
Good day, Mr. Speaker and fellow parliamentary members of the House. As a leader of opposition, I think I've come here to do some certain things. We to rate the status quo, make some clarifications, get the rebuttals, and also talk about my positive matter. First and foremost, I want to paint a picture basically of the status quo which the government has brought to this House. The painted and exclusive status quo, considering the definition that gave to the functions of the International Criminal Court. The International Criminal Court, it's basically meant to do three things when they told us only one. To face or prosecute individuals for international crimes of genocide, crimes against humanity, and then war crimes. They've only talked about the issues on crimes against humanity without making mention of the facts of the war crimes that we see in African countries, the international crimes of genocide which ICC has been able to handle, and they feel that we should just go with one of these functions and crucify them on that. And I believe it is not necessary, and we cannot just base this on just one thing. Now, coming down to rebuttals, first and foremost, we talked about the issue, we got a point from them, but no thank you, sir. They talked about the issue of unequal representation in the International Criminal Court. First and foremost, get this clear. It was founded in 2002 in July 1st, and it has 123 member state members. They take care of crime that has to do with murder, extermination of life, enslavement, torture, rape, persecution, apartheid, and so many other inhuman crimes that have to do with the world and attract world attention. And basically, we are made to understand that over 40% of its president, or about 30% of its presidency have Africans in it. Now, the question of African judges being there, we cannot classify as, they cannot specifically tell us that there is an act that they function under that limits the judges from Africa from being chief judges in the International Criminal Court. And we can easily say that it's basically possibly a function of their inability of most of these judges to ascertain the level of necessity that will demand them from being there. Because we can't remember of any record of any African judge that tried getting there and he was sent out just because he's an African. So if you talk about that foreign judges are there, United States judges or Western judges are there, it is not a case, and it is not a reason to necessarily say that they are biased. Now, if you also come to talk about that there is an unfairness in the representation, I believe if I am unfairly represented in an organization, I am a member, and I feel my right is being grossly abused, I step out. Is there any African country that has stepped out from the International Criminal Court, one of the member states, that have stepped out just because they feel that they are marginalized or they are not being listened to? No. So how do we clarify this? Is it because there is a problem that most times they focus their ideas in Africa? Now let us consider this. When there is a chaos in this room, there is a revolt here, there is a revolt there. When there is more revolt, isn't it where attention will be drawn? It is necessary we come to understand the fact that Africa is a third world continent. And godwadism of this African nation is so much that we have issues associated with these developmental processes. When you see presidents trying to out the president and genocide, and most of these crimes are being committed. And that is exactly why they are focusing their attention to these places. So you cannot blame them for focusing their attention on Africa. Can you prove to this house that there are many other continents that are having basic problems of genocide, war crimes, and inhuman treatment to the masses that they've not visited? It is not possible. It is not in existence. And on these grounds, we believe that they are doing the best and they are not being biased. Before I go into my positive matter, what do you want to say?
Israel has an account of genocide, has an account of war crimes, has an abuse of human rights in Israel. Why has ICC not gone there?
Thank you very much. Part of my story, there was a story that I was trying to collect. ICC has also received complaints from 139 countries, but due to the procedure in handling their issues, they've started investigation in basically 9 countries. Israel is one of them. Democratic Republic of Congo, Sudan, Libya, the Central African Republic, Kenya, Cote d'Ivoire, Mali. These are places where they started investigation. And currently, they are also started investigation in Nigeria, Iraq, Palestine, and Afghanistan. Most of these countries are not even African countries. And African countries are also in there. So why will you say just because they've not ousted or got the president of Israel, then there is a problem with their justification or the justification of their act? It is basically also come to understand an argument that they brought to this honorable house. They said, why would you be disturbing Kenyatta while he's still on seat? They've not called him to the court. He has only been charged. And we are not saying that they've not in any way gone there to get him out of power or get him totally distracted from there. He has just been told and mentioned as someone who has violated some offenses, who has committed some offenses, and when time is due, he'll be called in. What are positive matters? First and foremost, I'm bringing 3 positive matters to this house. The first I'm talking about is based on the example and the veracity of the examples of their prominent inductees, both those Africans and non-Africans. We talk about the issue of the major investigation they've been able to do, and also the godism of the developing countries of the world. First and foremost, the prevalent examples. No, thank you, sir.
You know why, sir?
It is better we also come to understand and accept the fact that considering recent analysis, they have the Omar al-Bashir of Sudan has been already indicted, one of the prominent indictees from Africa. And will you say that Omar was indicted for no just cause? We understand what he did in Sudan that caused a secession in Sudan, lives that were spent, and it was of world importance, world attention. And do you say that they should not have done anything? Do you still call it bias? No. Secondly, you talk about the former Libyan president. He had been already sued, but it's just that he died. And we know that justice should have been met. And the people of Africa, Libyans, are happy. Understand one thing: if the people of this country who they've sued are not happy and they are really complaining that these people have sued their presidency unjustly, then we would be having an argument that they've not been good enough. But for the fact that these people are feeling that they are having a fair play and that they are being necessarily accepting the International Criminal Court verdict, and also the fact that they are encroaching into their country and picking these people, you understand the fact that they are being justified and they are not having any bias in them. Now they also ask, there was also now we also talk about Joseph Kony in Sierra Leone, and also the Liberian president Charles Taylor, who has backed already a 50-year jail term. Would you say that Charles Taylor he doesn't want the 50-year jail term that you back? You get to see that there has not been any complaint about this. So the problem is not necessarily what they are bringing to the house. They are not biased. They've not been able to prove to us that they are basically biased. Second argument, considering the issue of major investigations, I've earlier made it clear that they started an investigation of 10 cases both in Israel, in Syria, in Democratic Republic of Congo, Sudan, Libya, CAR, Kenya, Cote d'Ivoire, and Mali. Yes, most of them are Africans because they are third world countries, and you see that because of the developmental problems associated with these people, they have more of issues to be handled, and that is where the slide would tell to where there is a problem. What have we been able to talk to this honorable house? We've been able to disprove the fact that these people are not biased, making you understand with examples that the most prominent countries have committed major problems, giving major investigation, and also the problem of terrorism in developing African countries. On this ground, we are proud to refuse.
Deputy Prime Minister, please come up and conclude.
Thank you. I rose in this motion of which we here to report to give us statement. First of all, what do we want? We told you we want a good representation. We told you we want transparency. We told you also that we want justification in their judgment. And that is why we feel that the International Criminal Court has gone against all this. We also saw a government side which gave us a clear argument of what International Criminal Court has been all about, and we also saw their unjustification on these African leaders. We have not seen a case whereby they have tried and they have persecuted the Europeans, they have persecuted the Asians, they have persecuted the Middle East leaders, and we say it is unjustified, and that is why we feel that they have been biased. First of all, what do we bring to these debates? First of all, we tell you that the International Criminal Court of Justice has not done their work because we have seen them disrupt municipal works. We tell you that you just don't come to a nation to persecute a sitting leader, which the opposition side never failed to answer. They gave a clear definition of Charles Taylor, an example of Charles Taylor. Charles Taylor was out of power before he was being tried, and Charles Taylor was also being tried first from the municipal law. We feel that this is an act of respect. We feel that this is an act of sovereignty, which is also being given to this leader, which the International Criminal Court has looked on the weakness of black nations because of their low standard. And that is why we also saw the opposition side, which came out here again to give us an argument that these people are third world nations, that they don't have the power to judge. We tell you that Kofi Annan was the United Nations Secretary General. Yeah. We told you that Ghana is also a third world country. So we tell you that they also have the power. And that is why we from this side told you of unequal representation, which my government side told you. So, what do we bring to these debates? First of all, we will tell you why their actions are unjustified and why these actions are biased. Before we tell you this, we'll give you lots of examples whereby we portray our points. First of all, we tell you in Italy, whereby Blasingame was being charged for rape, money laundering. We tell you that he was not being tried in the International Criminal Court of Justice, despite what he did in Italy. Yeah. We saw a free leverage being given to him. But we also give you an example of Israel. Why do we come here and tell you that the United States, the ISIS has gone under the respect of the United States? We tell you that there is a sort of protection and leverage that has been given to these Israeli leaders. We tell you that right from 1948, from their independence to 67 to 70, we tell you that Israel has committed so much crimes and genocide in our society, but yet the ISIS said it does not matter. Why? Because of the United Nations hold on ISIS, and that is why we feel that it is unjustified. Mr. Speaker, we also give you another example in Syria. We tell you that the Syrian leader has committed a lot of crime. We tell you that Assad and his father has committed a lot of crime. but we see it in the Middle East, which I told you I will give you examples from different nations. We see it in the Middle East where these leaders has not been tried. Why? Because of the Russian covering on Syria. This is why we are telling you that there is a lot of protections on these people, and that is why we feel that Africa, they have come down to look on Africa weakness, and that is why we feel that this is a sort of exploitation. This is a sort of making them dependent upon the Western ideology. We also tell you that the Western ideology judge, the ISIS judge based on African leaders is based on a Western perspective and not an international perspective. If you tell me that international court of justice is truly international, then we tell you that everyone's municipal law should be taken into cognizance in this. We tell you that there should be a leverage, because we tell you that municipal law also matters in the international law, and that is why we tell you that ISIS through this act has gone against international law, because we tell you that international law goes down to the municipal law, and that is what this opposition side has failed to see. We also saw an opposition side that came to tell us that my leader told us that these crimes are not, it's not an act, that he didn't tell us that it's genocide and stuff like that. But we also saw the government side which told us that this is against human rights. When something is against human rights, genocide, criminal charges, and rape and these things are part of it. And that is why we tell you that we have given you a better argument to win this debate.
Okay,
What do you want to say, sir?
All right. We want to tell you from the closing opposition that ISIS has a particular metric, a particular framework for judging their cases, war crimes and genocide. A majority of these conflicts, political conflicts, happen in Africa. Then the ones that happen outside Africa have time period.
Thank you. I gave you an example of where this has happened in Europe, in the Middle East, and in other countries, and yet you still fail to listen. I told you again that in Israel, even right now, Netanyahu has committed a lot of crime, but yet we see a lot of leverage on him. We saw the recent Gaza war, which thousands were killed. So we tell you that it's a genocide act, which Netanyahu has not been tried. So we tell you that this is a coverage from the United States, and that is why we tell you that it is unjustified. Why am I telling you it's unjustified on my positive matter? I tell you that these leaders are sitting leaders. In the constitution of ISIS, we tell you that this ICC, International Criminal Court of Justice, we tell you that these leaders should not be sitting, because this would disrupt the government of the day, because this would go against their true sovereignty, because this would go against the leverage that is being given to this leader. And if they want to respect it, we tell you that they should respect the standard of international law, because we tell you that Jomo Kenyatta is being called for trial. When he is sitting, this is where we find there is a problem. We are not saying that he does not have criminal charges and stuff like that, which the opposition side will come to tell us. We are not going against that, but we are telling you that there should be a form of respect, there should be a form of transparency, there should be a form of equity, there should be a form of fairness, which the International Criminal Court of Justice has denied the African leaders. And that is why we feel that this is sentimental against African nations and the whole black nations. Mr. Speaker, we also tell you that this is an exploitative and dependent tendency, whereby they want these leaders to be tied to the ISIS, to be tied to the justification of what they say, because they feel that most of these leaders has denied the Westerns from coming into their country. So they use this as a form of leverage to bring them down. They use this as a form of leverage to make them feel that they have to dictate all that happens in their country. So we tell you that this also goes against international law, because international law respects the sovereignty of a nation when these leaders are sitting. So we tell you that it is unjustified from my point. What have we told you in this debate? We have told you that it is sentimentally attached. We have also told you that this is an unnecessary interference to disrupt government of the day. We have told you that this is against sovereignty. We have told you that this is a form of personal interest. We have told you that this is unjustified, because he gave you an example of Bush that did it in Kosovo, trying to disrupt the sovereignty of Serbia. Nothing happened, whereby lots were killed. So we tell you that this is also a form of leverage given to the United States. We tell you that if international law should be respected, it should be respected internationally. Yeah. So we tell you that this is a big form of biasness. We also told you that we want equity, we want fairness, we want justice. We told you that we don't want exploitation in our society, and that is why we have told you that if they really want to bring justice, they should bring it to other countries, they should bring it to other nations, and we will know that the ICC truly stands for justice.
the leader of opposition has the floor.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. The session before us today is that this House believes that ICC is biased in Africa. Now, I should first of all start to make some clarifications with this resolution. This House believes that ICC is biased in Africa. How has this opening government been able to tell us or prove to us that ICC is biased? You don't just have a belief when you do not have a proof to back up your belief. You can't just come out and tell us that because you believe that ICC is biased in Africa, then we should go and start running haywire. What is your proof? Now, they mentioned the, let me go straight, like I said, I'm going to give you some clarifications with what they are trying to, the point they are trying to address for us here. And then also, I'm going to give you what the status quo, and then reasons why we do not think that ICC is biased in Africa. Now, the Prime Minister came up and mentioned the particular case of unequal representation. How can you make this preposterous accusation that these persons are having, that we have unequal representation? Now, we all know that just like in this debate that we are in, because I am from a particular school, you don't expect a judge from my school to come and judge me. So how do you expect African judges to come and sit over African cases? How do you expect this to be a credible case? It is not possible. The only reason why we have majority of Westerners judging these cases is because they are African cases, and that you cannot invite African judges. It does not mean that African judges do not exist in the ICC. Now, let me also mention to you an issue. You mentioned that in the opening that UN found it necessary to constitute the ICC. Now, these states are member states of the UN, and we should also make you know that members of the UN unanimously agree to be placed under the law of the UN. Now, for you to be a member of the UN, you have agreed that UN should supersede, should have a president over your country if there is an issue. Now, they mentioned the issue of municipal laws and municipal laws. What do you have to say?
UN is not a nation, it's a representation of different nations.
Fine, and then yes, it's a representation of many nations, and these many nations have agreed to have a court that can govern them when their municipal courts have failed them. That is why ICC is there. And let me also mention to you that ICC only has jurisdiction over cases that have to do with humanitarian laws, genocide, and war crimes. How can you, as a deputy prime minister, come up and tell us that Blasingame was charged of rape and money laundering? How does this have to do with war crime and genocide? We say that ICC has a specific issue that they don't just you can't charge somebody for rape to ICC. If somebody steals your money, you can't charge it to ICC. But it's why your municipal law details are there. So we are telling you that the issue of Blasingame is not an issue because ICC cannot be invited into such petty cases. They have more pertinent issues that they should treat. Let me also go back to what you mentioned. You also mentioned that the issue of municipal law, that they should allow these countries and their municipal laws to handle the cases. Now, fine, let me tell you that as a president of a country, you are the grand commander of this country, and that you are in charge of the armed forces. Invariably, you are in charge of the municipal law. So there are issues whereby the president is in charge of the municipal law, and then they cannot touch him. When the president has these people in his pocket, they cannot touch him. That is why the ICC, which is above the president, by his own submission under them, being a member of the UN, that is why the ICC has right to step in without consultation. They don't owe you an explanation when they come in. What they do is that their trial should be fair and just. And if you go all over the internet, you see ICC cases that are being placed there. They don't hide their cases. It's not like the municipal law, whereby things are done behind doors, and they come out and behind the back, and they come out and give you reasons. Now, these persons do their trials openly, and it is not hidden. Let me also go straight to another issue you mentioned. You mentioned the issue of Kenyatta. Now, Kenyatta has only been accused. He has not even been proven guilty. We can't wait until he leaves the seat before we start the investigation. They are investigating him because it is best to investigate him while he's still in office, because they are charging him as a government, not as a person. So the government is what has committed this crime, and they have to first of all prove that he is guilty before waiting for him to come down before they nab him. So the Kenyatta has not been nabbed, and that issue is not an example to be raised under this. Let me also go straight to my major point now. Now, the issue why we believe that these persons have reason, because that's the only point that I've been able to make, that the majority of cases that are being treated by ICC are African cases. Now, we all know that genocide and war crimes are peculiar with third world countries, and third world countries are predominant in Africa as a continent. That is why it is where these crimes that are being committed. That is where the court will be channeled. If you have a proof that there is war crime going on in the United States of America, then you can tell us that ICC has not been able to charge America or has not been able to charge President Obama in for his case. What do you have to say?
If you say the ICC have struggle, bring humanity, right? Now, you find out that Bill Clinton went to Kosovo to commit human crimes. Why did ICC not charge him?
Bill Clinton went to Kosovo to commit human crimes, and why did ICC not charge him? Now, first of all, you don't have proof of that in the case. That is basic. You don't have proof of that in the first instance. And then you also mentioned that he went to Kosovo. Okay, fine. My corporation leader came here to mention to you that you have cases that are undergoing investigations, right? And he mentioned to you the issue of Israel, mentioned to you the issue of the Democratic Republic of Congo, Sudan, Libya, and this. And then you also went ahead to tell us, to mention the issue of Israel. You lay base on that, and then this one. Now let me tell you that there are 39 cases that have been reported under to the ICC. You don't expect the ICC to handle 39 cases at a time. It is not happening. You cannot put your 10 fingers into your mouth at a time. One thing at a time. 9 cases are undergoing investigation. You don't expect that one to be the highest. Now, we have these cases that are all over the place. We mentioned to you the issue of the Liberian president. I've taken enough of your eyes. We mentioned to you the issue of the Liberian president and the rest of them. Even before the ICC stepped into their cases, the whole world frowned at the nature of their impunity over human rights commission, over the rights of their citizens and the rest of it. Now also, let me mention to you one reason why the ICC, we believe, is not biased, because these cases that they have been able to prove in Africa and convict this president has been a deterrent to other African nations. That is why we believe that they are not biased, because they are even helping us to reduce the issue of genocide, war crime, and violation of human rights. Now this is why we have been able. This is what we have been able to bring to you, because these people cannot just come up and tell us that they believe that ICC is biased in Africa. It is not what we are here to discuss. You should be able to give us proof. This is why we should win this debate, because we have been able to give you proof that these persons are not biased. The reason why they come to Africa is because Africa has the highest cases of war crimes and genocide. Finally, what have I been able to tell you? I've been able to make clarification about what ICC stands for, and to tell you that war crimes and genocide are peculiar to developing countries which are predominant in Africa, and even wars have laws governing them. And that's why the ICC stands for. I've been able to give the status quo, difference to other Africans, and then mention to you also reporters about the issue of Israel, which they raise, which should not count because Israel is already under investigation. With this, I believe that we should win this debate. Thank you very much.
Back to closing government. I will invite the member of government to come up.
Good afternoon, House. The issue before this House is that the House believes that ICC is biased against Africa, and the government has come here to give us some points that relate to the issue of why the ICC is truly biased against Africa. He gave us the background by saying that the UN created the ICC and that the ICC listens to the directives of the USA. And he gave us points by saying that the reason for this debate is to state that justice, fairness, and equality of the ICC towards leaders of Africa is the reason why this debate is holding, and why the House believes that Africa is being biased by the ICC. He gave us points of unequal representation in the ICC. He talked about distractions to the government of Africa when leaders of African nations are being brought before the ICC while in power. He gave us points as to why international law is being breached, where state sovereignty is being trounced because the municipal law decisions are not listened to or accepted by the ICC. And he cited cases of the fact that the government said that they have instances where European leaders are not brought before the ICC. And the opposition came before us today and gave some points by listing the duties of the ICC and saying that it's about genocide, war crimes, and humanity. Need I point to the opposition that the reason for this debate is the equality, justice, and fairness of the ICC towards Africans, not the duties of the ICC. Thank you for that education, opposition. And I move on to the and I move on to the issue of the fact that the opposition called Africa a third world country. Need I remind the opposition that the color of his face was screaming to the room when he stated that fact. I move on to the issue of the number of judges in the ICC. The opposition stated that the number of judges in the ICC is not relevant. I will say to him that there is a certain principle in law which is called nemo judet in causa sua, that somebody must not be a judge in his own case. So imagine someone, a leader of Africa, of an African country, who has been found not guilty by the municipal court in his country, being brought before the ICC to face a judge constitution of 2 or 3 white people against 1 black African. How fair, right, or just is that? The deputy prime minister came over, the deputy opposition leader came over and told us that municipal laws are the laws of a particular country, blah blah blah, blah blah blah. But if the municipal court of a particular country finds its leader not guilty, it is left for them to check the credibility of their court, not for the ICC to drag that same leader before a poorly constituted representation of the ICC where several white people are judging the same court. That is injustice opposition. Moving on to the reason why the closing government believes that this debate is one-sided to an extent. We'll give our pieces, we'll give our reasons. Racism. People believe that the issue of racism has been properly trounced in the world. But I will give you the real-life experiences, or I will give you everyday experiences of why racism is a reason for bias of the ICC against Africa. We'll look at football. Balotelli plays for AC Milan, and people shout and curse him as a monkey, to the extent that he had to walk off the pitch during a match. I'll give you an example of Dani Alves, where he was taking a corner kick and they threw a banana at him, and he ate it. And instead of the entire world to point to the reason of the racist action, they were instead reacting to his reaction of eating the banana. That is the kind of world that Africa lives in. And then the opposition calls us a third world country and insult to our face again. I move on to the issue of constitution by whites, and I reiterate the issue of Nemo Judex in Kosasua, that where the ICC is being constituted by whites and it is being controlled by the US according to the directives of the government, according to the state of the government, and we bring up the example that the government gave of Bill Clinton. How then can that same court be right, fair, or just when a black African president is being brought before it? I'll give you another point of pre-trial publicity. Every time something happens in Africa, the whites stand up to debate against it. I'll give you instances: the abduction of the Chibok girls. When the Chibok girls were abducted in Nigeria, fine, Nigeria is suffering insurgents, but the CNN representative Aisha Sese knew more about what was happening in Nigeria than our own information minister Labra Mako. I'll give you another instance: the insurgents in Somalia and Liberia. Please see. And I'll give you another instance of the economic situation in Zimbabwe. The whites see Africans as poorly civilized, and they feel that they know more than us in our own governance. Hence, if anything comes before their courts, they are instantly biased towards the results because they believe that we cannot be able to rule ourselves properly. Moving on to the issue of Uhuru Kenyatta. That is a clear example of the fact that if a country or if the ICC believes that we cannot rule ourselves with these instances that are given, how then would they be able to sit and adjudicate fairly or justly when an African leader is involved? I'll give you another instance of the fact that Bola Ajibola is the only black president of the ICJ, which is the International Court of Justice, where the judges are gotten to rule in the International Court of Criminals. If we've had only one black president since the inception of the ICC ruling in that capacity, how then can we say that the ICC is constituted in such a way that it can render fair judgment to African leaders? And then I will digress a little to show you that this instance does not only apply to the ICC. It also applies to instances where world confederations are bringing up. I'll give you FIFA as an example. Only one African nation has hosted the FIFA World Cup since the inception of the World Cup, South Africa. Don't give me the instance that it is because of economic imbalance in Africa. Because Brazil is on economic power with several African nations and they have hosted the World Cup several times. What I'm bringing before this house is the fact that racism is an issue, the fact that pretrial publicity is an issue, the fact that the constitution of the ICC judge is an issue, and the fact that the government reiterates that fairness, justice, and equality should be the hallmark of why the ICC is unfair to Africa. Thank you.
Closing opposition, we have member of the opposition now taking the floor.
Can you guys hear me now? Yeah. Can you hear me very well?
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a problem that identifies frequent treatments of African leaders. We have a problem that actually assumes that ICC treats a lot of political crises in Africa differently from what it actually assumes as a political framework for treating other crises in other continents. So we think that the only argument that opening up government has given us that predicated on a reasonable logic that identified the facts and their logic to be true in the contemporary society, which we prove from the closing opposition, is that ICC tries political leaders. However, they have mischaracterized the directives of ICC. ICC does not just try every criminal case. ICC tries only genocide, war crimes, and murder cases that have political motivation and political influence. That is why a lot of leaders are reprimanded by ICC, but a lot of leaders are not. When you talk of Cote d'Ivoire, when you talk of Mali, when you talk of Pakistan and Afghanistan, every case was between Ouattara and Laurent Gbagbo. Mali was between Azawad and the Malian government. Sudan was between Sudanese rebels and the government. Pakistan was between the Taliban and the Pakistanese government. That actually proves that there has to be a warring situation in the country. So when you give us instances of the United States of America, when you give us instances of Israel, when you give us instances of nations that only have issues of internal political instability, they don't really appeal to your logic and reveal your overall argument is flawed. From the closing government, we identified a paranoid shift in the treatment of international court cases and criminal cases. They actually identified racism as the main reason why ICC is biased in society. We think that is just being paranoid of the closing government. Africans basically are too big to sneak out the issues of racism because Africans feel maligned, Africans have inferiority complexes. However, we are going to prove from the closing opposition why racism is not an issue in this argument and why color should not be used as a basis for judgment and determination of bias in this argument. What do we have from the closing government? We have the closing opposition. We have basically three arguments. First, they're going to prove to you why there's a misidentification of market focus. Secondly, they're going to prove to you why all we have from the government side is the wrong societal metric for determining bias. And thirdly, we are going to prove to you why there is a homogeneous set of factors that delegitimize the bias concept, even if their facts remain true. First of all, a clarification. I've proven to you, ladies and gentlemen, that ICC does not try every case. Because they try genocide, because they try war crimes, we have to be very specific, we have to be very articulate in our determination of the judgment of their biasness or not. First argument, misidentification of market focus. Let's get this straight. Because they only try war crimes and genocide, a majority of these conflicts happen in Africa in contemporary society. What is your justification that they are unfair? Most of the European countries in the world that they gave as their examples are politically stable. When you talk of Israel, what they have is a running parliament. What they have is a prime minister that only have economic issues with their regional countries. When you talk of United States of America, they have a very stable democracy that is a role model to many countries. But because majority of the conflicts of the world that actually bring about the narratives of war crimes, terror, and genocide and murders happen in Africa, ICC has to be sensitive to these needs. So when you mischaracterize the sensitivity of ICC at the political scale, we think you are being unfair on your own. You will think you are being biased because you just want to antagonize the good work of an ICC court. Secondly, we think that the collapse of internal state institutions of African societies after the Cold War has rendered Africa to be susceptible to majority of these direct conflicts. That means ICC has to act to not just act as a deterrent to other African leaders, but also to protect the fragile sectors in Africa. Because Africa doesn't necessarily have a very strong internal political system. Thank you.
Okay, we would like you to elucidate the fact that the issue before the House is that of justice and fairness in trials.
That is not debatable. Justice, fairness, when you bring about ICC, criminal court, and you talk about biasness, it has to be about justice, fairness, and equality. What we are saying from the closing opposition is that they are just, they are fair, and they are mischaracterizing what they are doing, and misidentifying their game. No, thank you. What we have, second argument, what we have is a wrong societal metric for determining bias. We are going to prove this in two ways. First, political time relativism. They gave instances of holding European countries and political leaders that committed crimes in Europe. We think that you have issues with what ICC tries with relation to time. If a white political leader actually commits a lot of crimes, when the whites were susceptible to having war crimes in situations like the Kosovo crime, like the Kosovo war in 1991, if these people actually had issues of genocide, murder leveled against them and leveraged against them, and ICC did not try them then, and ICC did not bring them to court in the 20-year scale with mutual exclusivity as a reason for bringing another person from Africa who commits such a crime, you can prove that ICC is unfair.
You're
But ladies and gentlemen, the Kosovo leader from Croatia, Kravic, who was responsible for actually masterminding most of the genocidal problems, most of the war crimes in the Kosovo war, was reprimanded. That actually proves that ICC was not unfair. The only issue that people have, the government side has, is that majority of the European countries do not have internal war crime scenarios today. So they feel that the ICC is not tilting or inclining towards those regions because these regions are regionally peaceful. They are particularly and relatively peaceful. So you cannot simply tell them to actually reprimand every political leader that has fraudulent leverages against them, even when they don't appeal to genocidal and war crime directives. No, thank you, sir. They gave conspiracy theories of the United States. That was ridiculous. Okay, second argument, we are going to debunk the concept that color should be a basis for bias. We've told you, ladies and gentlemen, that the government runs a sociological metric that many points as color difference as the basis of bias. We think that this is a general problem of African societies. Because when there is an international representation, when there is an international issue, they only look at their esteem issues, the historical narratives that have been placed upon them through slave trade, through colonialism, actually makes them to be on the defensive when decisions go against them. That actually is racist on its own because it antagonizes the good work of fair international criminal courts that try to bring to book African leaders that were unfair because of the racist undertones. We think this is unfair from the whole government team, and they should actually rectify their argument. The second argument and second line. Homogeneous set of factors that delegitimize the bias concept. We think that Africa is a very young and politically naive state. That is why, from the closing opposition, we tell you that the only reason why there are frequent cases of ICC persecution of African leaders is because, one, the local courts in Africa that are in war crime scenarios and that are actually in war cannot adequately, effectively prosecute these leaders on their own. You cannot simply tell me that the Sudanese local court could have actually brought Bashir to book because he would simply manipulate the political framework because they are in war. They have unstable political scenarios. No, thank you. So ICC is simply doing what they know how to do best and doing us a favor. And secondly, even if whites are not tried by ICC, there is 90% assurance that their local courts will try them because these whites actually have a very strong local court. We are not being racist, we are being factual. ICC is spread.
We now move on to closing governments. Government clip. Please come up and present and close the case for government.
Mr. Chairman, members of the House, so far in this debate, interesting and salient arguments have been canvassed by both parties to this argument. This House believes that ICC, the International Criminal Court, is biased against Africa. In the course of the argument, the Prime Minister has stated that the ICC is the judicial arm of the United Nations, and the goal is to checkmate tyrant leaders in the world from abusing the rights of their citizens. In order to further their arguments, the governments have stated on their part that there is the issue of unequal representation in the ICC. Also, it has been stated that the ICC is acting mainly on the United States directive. Furthermore, the government also stated that proper justice and fairness is not being attained in ICC, and the issue of transparency is a problem. The government also stated on our side that exploitation and dependency tendency of Africans on the Western world is being fostered by ICC. However, the opposition do not agree with this position, as they came to state that the objective of ICC is to checkmate crimes against humanity, war crimes, and crimes of genocide. They also stated that currently there are 39 cases on ground, of which ICC is now attending to 9 of them. They also stated that the case of the former president of Libya is not a bone of contention because he is not being tried. He has only been arrested. The government also stated that since the African nations are signatory to the ICC have the right to intervene in the issue. They said that the ICC have come to Africa. They said they came to Africa because there is high rate of war crimes in Africa, and that Kenyatta, like I said earlier, has only been arrested and has not been tried. However, the government member has stated, after rebutting the issues, stated 3 arguments before this house, that there is the issue of racism in the course of extending an argument, stated also that there is the issue of pretrial publicity, and that the ICC is widely constituted by the whites. However, the opposition member came and stated that there is no ground for the determination of bias. As much as the government side would have loved to admit the arguments of the opposition, it is obvious that various arguments that have been conversed by the opposition today have a lot of logical flaws that we cannot afford to ignore. Members of the House, it is a fact and not a fallacy that he who chooses to ignore reality will end up in calamity. It is ridiculous to think that the opposition is bringing issues like this that trample upon the dignity of the Africans, you and I, and trying to defend the interest of the Western nations. The government stated, the opposition stated that the objectives of the ICC is crime against humanity, war crime, and genocide. But the question is, how many of these issues have been addressed by the ICC in the Western world? After all, the objective and the goal of ICC is not African-centered, it is world-centered. Besides, the opposition stated, they said that 39 complaints are currently on ground and that the ICC is attending to 9 of them. I'll take you in a moment. How do we agree to this kind of position? Out of 39 issues, 9 of them have been addressed. If you are a teacher and you gave 39 questions and a student succeeded in answering just 9 of them, will you rank that student pass or fail? Members of the House, simple logic tells us that the interest of the ICC is not in favor of Africans, but rather to build the superiority of the Western world on Africans. The opposition stated a ridiculous qualification to describe Africans, forgetting that the color of their face is an obvious factor indicating that they are also Africans. Calling Africans a third world nation. Need I remind you that this nation you call third world nations have successfully made great impacts in the world. I think you are.
Yes, we want to know how many non-African presidents that have been indicted. And we'll bring to you proof of 3 of them. Bosnian President, Shovan, and Nostalgic President, and the German.
Thank you very much for that POI. I think I have answered the POI initially. If you compare the statistics of what you have just stated in the Western world to that of Africa, which ratio is greater? Members of the House, we cannot afford to call a spade a spoon. Even to a blind man, the size makes an obvious difference. The ICC is not interested in justice. Rather, they are boosting the superiority of the Western world upon us.
On that point, sir.
I'll take it later. The case of former Libyan president, the opposition stated that the man has only been arrested, he has not been tried. Do you know that a mere consciousness of the tendency of being tried for any particular crime is enough distraction from a constitutional duty of the president? Imagine a situation where a president of a country is aware that he or she will be facing trial at a particular point in time, will such a president be able to concentrate on the function of administration of the state? We are saying as the government that the opposition do not have a case this afternoon. Rather, they have only come to boost the ego of ICC on bases that are rather frivolous and watery. Members of the House, the government member stated that the ICC does not judge all cases. How can we know that ICC truly do not judge all cases, but even the cases that are within their capacity, how many of them have they been able to do justice to and hand international credibility for it? Members of the House, the opposition member stated that there is no ground for determination of bias. The question is, do we need a scale to measure the abstract concept of bias before we can determine that an institution is biased against another? The opposition member also stated that Africa is young. If the opposition member is aware that the fact that Africa is young does not give any international organization the license to trample our sovereignty. It is against this background that we, the opposition, have stated that this House believes that ICC is biased against Africa. Thank you.
Very much. We now move on to opposition with
Mr. Madam Speaker, House at large, I'd like to directly engage Governor with. He makes a statement that looks as if this debate is about efficiency. Can we remind this House that this debate is not about the efficiency of the ICC to try cases. This debate is solely about whether or not ICC is biased. So let's engage exactly what the government is saying in this debate, okay? So first of all, the Prime Minister wants to give us things like on equal representation in the ICC. So we have three answers to that. First of all, we don't think that there's equal number of Africans vis-a-vis other continents in the world, so there isn't a possibility of equal representation at the first place. For there are less Africans in that ICC than there are of other continents. Secondly, we talked about the concept of less technical know-how, and so we cannot use the magic of the color of my skin as a basis for determining whether we should be in the ICC or not. We cannot use piety as a reason to ensure that we are Africans in the ICC. We must ensure this House, and we tell you categorically that we know and we agree that there is less technical know-how in terms of justice systems in Africa, and it's a reflection in the ICC. And so let me tell you that most aggregation is westernized. So we don't think it's a problem of ICC, like the ICC is the only sector that exists in society where there are less black people or less African people, if you want to mention, right? We tell you that that's a complete reflection of the inadequacies of Africans to rise up to the status quo that exists in society, that we're incapable and refuse to grow. So you talk about most distractions that they distract leaders from office. This is the thing. So we don't think a society should exist where a known criminal was your head of a state and we allow him to exist in that capacity. So we don't think ICC is any way wrong for trying to indict someone who has clearly victimized the people who was asked to take care of. And that, I think, is the case that we saw in the Kenyatta case that he brings to you. Thirdly, it talks to you about the concept of sovereignty. We don't think in any society that sovereignty is ever absolute. That is the only reason why when one country messes up, another country can invade that country. I have a yardstick to invade that country. I'll take it in a second. And we don't think that sovereignty is absolute in any way. And they talk about the wicked that ICC is simply a work of the US directives. We don't think that the ICC is a work of US directives. We think that is completely fallacious. And let's assume that the US had any role to play, right? We think that what you see generally in society is that the US help most African countries than other countries in the world. And in countries where they choose not to invade, if there any problem that comes out of it, the US is normally blamed. For instance, the only reason why people are saying that the problem in Syria existed for so long is because the US refused to intervene in the first place. So if the US had any active part to play in the ICC, it's more of a directional part and not a mandatory part to try to victimize people that they spend most of the money. So because Africans are the direct recipients of the greatest chunk of allowances from the US, the same people that you claim that try to victimize you.
If individuals who are professionals in Africa can handle and become heads of international organizations like OPEC and United Nations, what makes ICC so superior that Africans are handling?
OPEC is oil. United Nations is not direct justice. So these are three different matrices that you bring to this house, Sheikh. And the fact that there's one person, one out of like the entire league of everybody in the OPEC, just one black person in the entire list of the years that could come up the ranks and be that person who will lead them, doesn't mean that there's enough people in the justice system, in ICC who are Africans who have the capacity to lead. So except you give us a basic or a justification for the fact, or a proof of someone who you feel is justifiably responsible and good enough to be